Uh, Eric, is it going to play? There we go. This very special kind of star is something that we call a pulsar. And pulsars are fascinating structures because, as far as we can tell, they stay extremely stable over extremely long periods of time. And so the electromagnetic fields, waveforms, and the stellar spectra of pulsars stay stable over hundreds of thousands of years to millions of years. And pulsars have a very, very regular timing pulse. And there's an exact calculation we can do for how that pulse changes over very, very long periods of time. So we're able to calculate what a pulsar is going to be like in 10,000 years, which makes them a perfect candidate for understanding how we might jump to another position somewhere else in the galaxy that might be, 10,000 light years away. Because if we can use pulsars as the navigation beacons to tell us and triangulate where we want to arrive to, now we've got a real key that we can use to make those jumps. And there's a gentleman whose name is escaping me at the moment, who actually wrote a book that I found recently on how he believes that pulsars were actually an advanced technology created by a hyper advanced galactic and intergalactic civilization to use them as navigation beacons. So when I came up with this idea initially and realized that these would be a key to traveling faster than light and jumping at long distances, and then came across his work through a presentation that a gentleman named Stephen Bassett was doing, then I opened my eyes to the real potential of pulsars as being these navigation beacons and helping us to get where we need to get at long distances. So this is the key to doing these superluminal jumps and navigating the galaxy through pulsar triangulation, as I was just saying. So you take 3 pulsars and a position across the galaxy somewhere far, far, far away, and you, through the knowledge of the specific vibrational resonant harmonics of each of those 3 stars, you're now triangulating the combination of those 3 energies spatially, and then configuring the external field of the craft, that 777 or that 21 structure, to match that specific frequency. And when the external field of the craft matches that frequency, space-time doesn't know any better. That if you could describe it as space-time thinking, you would say that space-time thinks that the craft is now in this new location. Literally, you're just matching the information structure of the target location. And by matching that information structure, you're now entering a space where you're in quantum coherence with that location. And the total quantum coherence is like entanglement, but in this case, because you have an envelope around the craft separating the internal space-time from the external space-time, the craft is then able to jump. And as it does that jump, it now displaces. It's no longer in the local location it was prior, and now it is in the location that it was jumping to. And when you do this kind of jump, there's literally no time passage that occurs. So it's instantaneous. And that instantaneous travel doesn't dilate any time. So time is still happening normally on Earth compared to you and your spacecraft. So literally, you can leave, you can jump across the galaxy to another star system, jump back, and, the only time that will have passed is the same relative local time that you've experienced. Unless, of course, you jump your spacecraft close to a black hole or something like that, like we see in Interstellar. If you're in another star system or galaxy's extremely heavy curvature gravitational field, well, yeah, that's going to warp space around you locally, and that's going to distort space-time for you versus back home. But as long as you're bouncing to gravitational wells which is what we call those areas in the vortices of space around stars and planets, as long as you're jumping to relatively similar gravitational wells to your own star system, you'll never notice any difference in time. And this is how our galactic civilization is propagated all over the galaxy. It explores all kinds of worlds, jumps back and forth to them easily and effectively and efficiently. And their capacity to do this and to create these boundary conditions around their craft to be able to literally fly directly into stars or through matter and things like that, because their space-time is separate from the external space-time. That's also led to a lot of misconception where people believe that these ships or these beings on the ships are just in another dimension. In other words, that they're not 3D, they're not physical. How would they be physical if they could fly into a mountain? But they actually have the technological capacity to phase through matter because of this space-time boundary. And so in many cases, these are just species growing up and evolving on planets just like you and I. And through their evolutionary process, eventually they learn some of these fundamental principles of space-time and begin to apply them and enact them to better their lives and to better and expand their exploration of themselves and their consciousness. So let's talk a little bit about these different qualities of a species that is required to be able to do stuff like this, to be able to do these kinds of jumps, and to have this level of technology. Well, one of the first and most important gifts, and it became very, very exceedingly obvious to me during my own personal contact experiences, is telepathy. Because by opening up our ability to communicate with others and exchange information through space-time, we develop several very special capacities. One, for example, is the ability to translate what others mean when they may speak a completely different language from us. And so if you're dealing with a galactic network of species, tons and tons, thousands of different speaking species, hundreds of thousands of languages, now the need for a universal translation system is more important than ever. And while they've developed augmentation technology to support that, the foundation comes from telepathy, because mind to mind, idea to idea, our thoughts and perceptions are actually fairly similar to each other. You know, we all know what a tree is, right? Because we've looked at a tree and we've seen a tree, we have the idea of a tree. And so it's very easy to pass the idea of tree to someone else, whether or not you use the word tree or not. The idea is more simple, and the idea can also frame it very easily, whether you know what kind of tree it is, because you can show, is it a pine tree? Is it an oak tree? Is it a walnut tree? Is it a, you know, what kind of tree is it? The other thing that telepathy really enables us to do is to communicate faster than light. And this has partially been proved by Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Group in their studies on remote viewing and the influence of consciousness on random number generation. They found in particular that it was possible for someone to get information about another space, another place in space-time. And they could get information about that place in space-time even if nobody else in the experiment knew what place was going to be chosen. In fact, in some cases, they just gave the person a number, and then later they randomly calculated based on that number where the location was that that person was going to have to try to remote view. So they didn't even decide on when they were, what place they were going to do it yet. And yet the person was still able to get information through and beyond the boundary of space-time about that location that was going to be calculated. And so they found that people, even without training, can get 70% accuracy in general remote viewing practices. And this also connects to astral travel, of course, because the idea of astral travel is just traveling with your consciousness to another space, moving your mind, your perception, and this higher field, the mental field of your body, to another location to gather information. And now let's apply this to galactic technology, because at a galactic technology level, if you want to be able to communicate to another star system and reach out to another world, you're not going to use radio waves. You're not going to be able to use any kind of light structure to do that communication. Light is way too slow, because even some of the closest stars are several light years away, and other stars that we may want to go to, the Pleiades, for example, is 400 light years away. So the idea of taking hundreds of years to receive and transmit information is just not doable. But if consciousness has the ability to have a shortcut through space-time and literally leverage the entanglement and quantum coherence capacities that are innate to our biological structure and field, which if you want more information on that, I recommend checking out the work of William Brown. He's also a biophysicist in the Resonance Academy, and helped to create and write a paper that's all about how the mind and consciousness relates to the space-time information network. And so we can use these innate capacities to actually have this faster than light communication, which is required if you're coordinating spacecraft, if you're, you have a starport, for example, and from that starport, you've got to coordinate ships coming into the planet and out of the planet. Those ships are coming from many, many light years away, but you have to help, coordinate the positions they're going to arrive in. The key, of course, is going to be, using a system that augments our internal telepathic capacities. And so we may see centers like this, in the polar regions of the Sirian system, for example, and other places where they're literally coordinating travel, relationships, communication between many different star systems, and leveraging technological interfaces and dashboards in order to augment their internal psychic telepathic abilities. And then these things are not weird. It's not unusual to do it. This is absolutely normal. And certain people specialize in the ability of reading the telepathic field and working with these augmentation systems to have the kinds of results that they're doing. And of course, any pilot who's piloting one of these starships is going to have to be able to interact with the ship, leveraging their ability to move with their mind to the location that they're going to. And that communicates to the ship a specific information structure that's in that location. The ship is going to back up that information structure with the library of pulsar locations relevant to that position and the current knowledge of the existing other star positions that are there and their specific light frequencies. And that combination gives us an exact harmonic frequency association and information structure for a point in space-time that may be across the galaxy, so that we can actually jump in that ship to get there. There are many kinds of starports, many kinds of planets, many kinds of worlds out there. Everything from, mountainous worlds like we see here in the Arcturian system to highly city-like worlds similar to Coruscant and Star Wars. And all of these kinds of places, have developed technology such that they've learned how to be both in balance with themselves and their environment, and leverage other specific technologies which enable them to have this extremely balanced relationship with the world around them. Some worlds have major motherships surrounding them, and smaller transport ships jump off and jump to different worlds. And so there's a very, very rich layer of experience that comes when a species begins to become interstellar. And we've seen a lot of this through the visions of Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek and George Lucas and Star Wars. What does it look like to have propagation throughout a galaxy? Although some of the pieces of the foundations of the principles of these galactic societies is missing from these visions too. Where Gene Roddenberry actually got it right was realizing that once you have these capacities, you no longer need an economic system, because you develop the ability to do replication. And replication allows you to create and produce the different materials that you need. And because you're able to produce anything that you need, there's no more value to gold or silver anymore. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But this, I believe, is where we're going. This is the next stage for human development on Earth, is to open up the ability to allow our population to travel throughout the multiverse. And if we're going to do that, if we're going to travel throughout the universe and go to different areas, at least initially within our own galaxy and some of the many, many, many worlds in this galaxy, we're going to have to, you know, gain some education. We might need something like a Starfleet Academy, which is certainly in my long-term project docket. But we also need to understand some of the basic technologies of these advanced societies and how they work and how they operate. And so the second major piece of technology that I want to talk about is replication. And replication, and this is an example of the little Star Trek replicator. I'm sure you guys have probably seen Star Trek at some point. And when, you know, you're watching Star Trek, they go over to this little machine in the wall and they type in a couple things, and it's like, it just like materializes, you know, their interesting blue cocktail or their, you know, plate for dinner, or their different things. So how does this work, and why is this important for us to look at and to think about? Well, for one thing, we've made huge progress towards actually making this a reality. One of the most advanced forms of doing this is excimer laser LIGA, which means lithography, galvano and abformung, which is lithography, electroplating and molding. Dirk Basting and Gerd Morowski have been working on that, and it's actually a system where you're literally exciting individual atoms and particles, and basically realigning those atoms and particles through very highly precise laser interactions at extremely small scales down at the atomic scale. We also have molecular beam epitaxy, which is an Oxford project. It's actually been able to be used to literally build gemstones. So between the laser LIGA and the beam epitaxy, we've been able to create diamonds one molecule or one atom at a time, and actually build different objects at this extremely small level. Now, nanotechnology has the potential to transform this whole thing, because through the use of nanorobots, little miniature nanorobots can actually rearrange matter and molecules and kind of do the hard work that would otherwise require a chemical reaction, and construct things from a nanoscale. Now, as we go further with this, we can begin to see that that there's a higher level of approach to this, which is by understanding that space-time is this harmonic vibrational network. And once we understand space-time as this harmonic vibrational network in tensegrity, we can actually approach that through using the lens of things like cymatics, which is Hans Jenny's work. And I'm sure a lot of us have seen the beautiful sort of things that come out of cymatics, which is just that specific vibrational notes, certain sounds in music actually create a geometric structure in the field. And we can see it in water, we can see it in air. And so if we can create a specific geometric arrangement to a field, and then we use molecular beam epitaxy radials to engage with the actual structure of the molecules in that new geometric structure, now we can do something that is called like molecular sculpting. But I believe that this actually, the key is interacting with the structure of the field at the level of the Planck scale. Because if we can do it all the way down at the Planck scale, at that level, we're literally dealing with the information structure of space-time itself. We're literally dealing with the information structure of the ether, and as above, so below. So within this field, the etheric field, we literally can have all of the information of an object stored there. And this is really important, because if we're looking at copying something, you know, certain major questions arise. You know, for example, like information storage, like how is it that an object actually stores its information? What does that information structure look like? What does it mean when something is a physical object? And how is it that a proton itself can come into being? Literally, how do we generate protons to generate the mass of these different kinds of objects? And then, of course, when we're dealing with things like food, you know, we have to start looking at the question of like, well, if I copy a tomato, then is it the same tomato? Like, is it exactly the same? It's my theory that at the Planck scale, if we can literally read the fundamental information network of something like a tomato, then and we replicate that information structure at the Planck scale, it literally is like the exact same tomato. There's no difference. You would have no difference in flavor, taste, structure, any of the things. It has all the health, all the benefits of the original tomato. And so I believe that this is possible, but only once we get to Planck scale. Because if we're just doing this molecularly or atomically, no, it's definitely a different tomato. And is it missing some kind of spirit or field to it? Highly possibly, yes. But I believe once we're doing it at the fundamental etheric field of space-time itself, we move past those issues. And then how do we do this at large scale? Can we actually leverage large scale molecular realigners and Planck scale replicators and say, sweep over the gargantuan mountains of trash that we've built all over this planet, or over the giant plasticine, you know, islands in the Pacific Ocean, and literally take existing structures and disintegrate them back into the fundamental field of the vacuum, giving us a solution to trash, and et cetera. Now, there's already some really great work being done on that front. There's a group called United Earth Energies, UEE, and United Earth Energies has developed a device which actually takes objects that you put inside of it, and it uses high temperature plasma to break down those objects and burn them. And by the burning and the breaking down of the object back to fundamental materials, it produces energy. So they figured out a way to take trash and make tons of energy from it. And my good friend Joyous is working with that company. They're out of Austin. I have high hopes for where they get to with that work. And let's really like look at this practically, right? If we are able to molecularly realign and create gold from scratch, from space-time, what value does gold have anymore? It doesn't. If we can create silver, if we can create gems, if we can create diamonds, if we can create all of these things identical to the way that they're created in the pressure structures of the energies of nature, then none of these things have value anymore. In fact, the only thing that has value becomes the information, the idea, the way that you use these fundamental resources. So resources at this point with a solid replicator become infinitely abundant. You can literally have anything you need, any resource that you need. And so this changes our whole approach to the economic system. And this is what's happened within these galactic societies and communities. Their economic system is no longer based on just resource. Their economic system is now based on information and creativity. Because here's the thing, I could replicate a cup of coffee, right? But that person who grew those coffee beans, you know, on their land and roasted them and ground them down and then milked the goats on their land for goat milk, and then, you know, took those coffee beans and made this like extremely rich, delicious cup of espresso, steamed the goat milk, added some fresh honey from their beehive, and made this amazing cappuccino. That artist, that person who created that way, them sharing that with the rest of the galaxy, it becomes a gift. And so people get to know each other's reputation, which is a form of economic exchange, through the gifts that they give. So that one barista, you know, out of Italy who did that becomes super famous and is given lots of gifts and leeway and many doors open for them because they have made this offering that so many people love and appreciate. And we know that, you know, in reality, money is not really the currency that makes things happen, even in our daily lives here now. What makes things happen and makes deals between people is trust. It's about relationships. It's about reputation. It's about how we honor each other and how we express gifts with each other. This is where the real currency comes out, with how we live and act. And we only make big progressions in our work and our careers as we build trust, as we build community, as we're able to, you know, build wealth through building trust and through receiving that trust in a different form of energy, which we call money. And so this is about entering an age that's about art as being the fundamental gift. What is your art? As Patrick Stewart says, you know, in Star Trek Enterprise, he says, you know, we no longer work for money. We work to better ourselves. And so Captain Picard, you know, knows what he's talking about. And Gene Roddenberry was a brilliant man who saw through this lens where we transcend the economic system and come into a space where everybody has their basic needs met and value becomes artistic and social rather than economic and material.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Neil with Portal to Ascension, and I just wanted to take a moment really quick and show you the Portal to Ascension platform. The presentation or the documentary that you just watched was one of our many productions that I've done over the years, created well over 1,000 workshops, events, conferences, retreats, webinars, and this is how our website works. If you want to go ahead and receive not only access to this presentation, but hundreds of other presentations that we have available for you right now for free. You can go to our website, you enter your name right here, you email right here, click sign up. Pretty soon we're going to be launching a new website, but the procedure is pretty much the same. You know, your name, email, sign up. Once you do that, you're going to get an email with your username and a temporary password. You then click login. Once you log in, you're going to see the whole entire backend laid out with all the webinars and presentations for you. Not only can you start typing by speaker name, topic, category, whatever you want, even letter, but you can scroll down this list here and sort by category. And I'm not going to read these off to you, but you can take a look. We have a lot of different topics: UFO disclosure, true world history, spiritual development, science, sacred geometry, and so much more. And then you can also search by speaker, which we have here alphabetically, or you can just browse the whole entire thing here and take a look at all these presentations. You are able to, if you can take a look up the top corner here, you're able to add to your watch list to watch these back anytime you want. So you can add to your watch list. It'll be put there. When you come back into the platform, you can continue watching where you left off. There's a documentaries tab, there's an interviews tab, and this is how the individual event page will look. So right now, you can go to the website, portaltoascension.org, put in your name and email, sign up. You'll get access to what you just watched, and there's so much more footage. There's free footage being added weekly. So really, this is a one-stop shop for consciousness, and there's always new valid content for you that is relevant for the times that we're currently in, where we're not only dissecting and delving deep into the ancient past, but also creating information that will empower us for the future to come. And here is an example of one of the event pages. This one's on Billy Carson, Quantum Macabre Manifestation. You can view it right there, description, speaker image. That will also go to his bio, and then also suggested webinars that you can tune into as well. And then, of course, please do leave a comment and leave us feedback. So there you go, guys. That's our back end, and that's how Portal to Ascension works. Go ahead, go to the website right now, portaltoascension.org. Enter your name, email, sign up. Take a look at the site. Let us know what you think, and enjoy.